was when Daddy when Daddy finally came home. She said the kids would hear his car in the driveway, and 8 feet would come scurrying into the kitchen, and they would start yelling, "Daddy's home, Daddy's home, Daddy, 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 Daddy." And he'd come through the door. He'd line each one up for hugs and kisses. Do you know he had a sugar spot for each one of his kids? Yes, there was Dexter's and Martin's, Yolanda's, and Bunny's. Phone would ring, important business, and the games would have to stop. But he'd come back, and then he'd line them up on the refrigerator. And they would get to jump. He'd say, "Jump!" And they would jump into his arms. Yolanda talked about how wonderful it felt to jump into her daddy's arms. "Son, you don't have to go to Memphis. Daddy, I promised. The garbage workers are on strike," he said. "They think that if I come and speak a word that I can make some changes. Their wages are lower than welfare. One died, there wasn't even enough money to bury him. There's violence in the city. They feel I can make a difference, Dad." Well, some of you know what happened. April 1968, he was staying at the Lorraine Motel, and unbeknownst to him, there was a man named James L. Ray. He'd been stalking him for a long time. Just waiting for the opportunity to shoot right behind him. They say he was standing on the balcony, leaning down, talking to Ben Branch, one of the assistants that were going to be at the service that night. Ben looked up at him and said, "Dr. King, will you come to our house after the service tonight? My wife and I want to cook you up some chicken and rice. We know you love that dish." Say he leaned over and he said, "Yes, Ben, I would love to come to your house tonight. Ask your wife, please, at the service tonight. Ask her to sing my favorite song, 'Precious Lord, Hold My Hand.' I love the way she sings that song." They say it sounded like a stick of dynamite that suddenly came out of nowhere. And the next thing they know, he was lying there. I wasn't there. I was on my way to church with Bunch. We drove into the parking lot. People came out, and I knew something was wrong. They were yelling, "Daddy King, Daddy King, Daddy King." I walked in to the parlor. Somebody had the television on. I heard the newscaster say Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. Bunch started crying, and I started praying. 20 minutes later, the newscaster came back on and said that my son had died. It was over. People ask me, they say, "Daddy King, how can you tell that story? You must be bitter." I say, "No, I'm hurt, but I'm not bitter." I tell them what I want to tell you, my brothers and sisters, tonight. Don't never let anybody make you stoop so low that you hate. Because hate is something that'll eat you up. But love is something that we've been created for. They say, "Daddy King, you got to be better. Didn't they find your son Alfred floating upside down in the swimming pool? You don't know to this day how he died." Daddy King, do you remember when that crazy person came into the church and started spraying bullets all over the church, and one of those bullets struck Bunch as she was sitting at the organ playing the Our Father and killed her suddenly? Oh, you must be bitter. I tell them, no, I'm not bitter. I remember something that my son said about a month before he died. He said, I don't know if I'm going to live a long life, but I want to live a committed life. Oh, I don't know if I will die before you, but if I do, and you get somebody to come and preach at my funeral, will you tell them not to talk too long? Would you tell them not to mention a whole lot of things about my Nobel Peace Prize and my other education? Those are very shallow things. Just tell them that Dr. Martin Luther King tried to love somebody, that he tried to clothe the naked, that he tried to feed the hungry. Just tell them that Dr. Martin Luther King tried to do God's will in his life. And if you're going to call me anything, he said, call me a drum major. A drum major for justice. A drum major for righteousness. A drum major for love. Oh, you see, I love that message too much to make room in my heart for the very thing that killed him. Oh, no, I've learned a long time to say whatever my lot, even when sea billows roll with sorrow, to say it is well. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well.
When peace like a river tendeth my way, when sorrows like billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul, with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. Help me if you know it.